Hello, welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me. In my series Freemasonry and Satanism, book review 74 part 3, continuation of this book, The Black Sun, Montauk's Nazi-Tibetan Connection, by Peter Moon. Look at the cover on this book. Notice the submarine in the water. Obviously an underground facility. Flying child, a being, a magician or an occultic figure lying down. Another flying child above. It's funny, if you don't pay attention to some of this stuff, it eludes you in the pictures. And we left off talking about Marduk. The above is a rendition of Marduk, which is the secret societies of Germany used in their literature and symbology. The pagan god, also known as Marduk, Mithras, Moloch, or Moloch in German. The Black Sun. So what I'm finding out, was a lot of activity, probably still is a lot of activity, on Long Island with some secret occult societies, apparently many witches' covens, and New York City's right nearby. There is the Long Island Railroad, and some of the things they were into involve space-time, interdimensional travel, communication, whether it's spiritual or have they managed to actually accomplish it in the physical realm, transporting an object or a person from this place, this earth, to the past or the future or elsewhere, Mars, the moon. I realize that this is all a bit bizarre, this conversation, but since I started going over these couple books, I think we started out with this one. And the discovery of a facility in the mountains, the Busiji Mountains, with tables and chairs and equipment that a normal-sized human like me wouldn't be able to operate. The chair would come up to here on me, the seat. The tabletop up here. And it had controls and holographic equipment. And Bibles are mentioned in the Bible. Giants are mentioned in the Bible. Funny how the brain works. And then I had another book I just finished today. Montauk Revisited. That's Montauk at the end of Long Island. Adventures in Synchronicity. Preston Nichols, one of the characters we've been reading about, the electronic technician engineer, who was involved in the Montauk Project, underground facilities, abducting young boys, and mind control and other psychic controls using electricity, electronics, and torture and forced sex on the young boys to traumatize them and for satanic rituals and communication with beings of the beyond. That's a mouthful. You think? Before I get started, because I've been reading these 3 books in the last few weeks, and probably I just finished, so it's going to take me actually a couple weeks to make all the videos I want to make on these books and the material within them. And of course, I'm only reading lines and paragraphs, portions of the books, so you'll have to, if you're interested, to go buy them. It's unbelievable information. And it has prompted me to put into the search engine on YouTube things like Jack Parsons, one of the main men who started up rocket engine science in the United States. He was into the occult, performing with Aleister Crowley in satanic rituals. Aleister Crowley was involved with NASA and JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, which a lot of people joked about calling it the Jack Parsons Laboratory. So there's much more going on here than meets the eye, and it certainly would behoove us to look into this. I will say this and confess, some people have made comments to my videos and said that they are insightful. So you know me, to be clear, pay attention to details kind of guy, I looked up insightful. Rouses, stirs, and excites to action. So that's what insightful does. It rouses, it stirs, it excites. And I write comments on press releases also, by the way, under the name Rick Miracle, which is not my real name, although my real name is similar. That's why I chose Rick Miracle. So I thought to myself, insightful, my videos are insightful. And I'm thinking about the recent Supreme Court actions, which I think about half of the people who sit on the Supreme Court are now Jewish, and I would probably suspect they are Zionist Jewish folks, not the good Jewish folks. They're more loyal to Israel, and they have an agenda. Like Professor Higgins' book, The Jewish Utopia. And recently, there was an issue that went before the Supreme Court about gun ownership, I think higher tech weapons, and the Supreme Court refused to have a hearing or discuss the matter about states banning such weapons. So there is an agenda, clearly. One of the agendas is Agenda 21, which is an attempt, I guess it's sustainability in disguise. They use great words and they try to paint everything with a nice picture. But as we know, in the Middle East, the Arabs are either have been murdered or evicted, and they're fleeing for their lives. You know, an area the size of the United States. They're forcing everybody out. And that is the land of Babylon. Yes, they've conquered Iraq. They're trying to destroy Syria, Afghanistan. They don't care about the people. They're murdering the people. They're bombing the cities. They're bombing the oil fields. It's a horrific affair. So the area of Babylon. So I looked up Babylon. What does that mean? Or I saw it on a video. The gateway to the gods. Wow, I thought. Wait a minute. Zachariah Stitchens got a hold of those tablets at the museums and other places. Wrote all those books. I have one of his books. We need to read it. Arizona Wilder said that Zachariah Stitchens was at one of those Illuminati rituals where they shapeshift from human bodies back into their reptilian bodies and viciously attack a person to be sacrificed, drinking their blood and drinking their flesh. And I've been finding this information in a lot of the stuff I've been going over. Videos I watch, books I buy. And then I find out, watching some more, I've been prompted with all this new information to watch some videos with the Jack Parsons, JPL, Aleister Crowley, NASA, and come across some crazy information, adding more to what I already know, as bizarre as it can be. But apparently, besides aluminum, barium, and strontium in the sky spraying, on one video it says they're dumping lithium in the chemtrails. If you go look outside your house, usually you'll see they're pasting the sky white, pasty white, with those lines crisscrossing the sky. Anyways, apparently lithium destroys the immune system. And I was watching another video with an attorney who I think was having children at about 1983. And his son has a slight version of autism, called something like Tourette's. And he said, as a lawyer, he was getting regularly calls and appointments for people whose children had autism. And apparently the mercury in the vaccines was way out of proportion for a brand new child. So, Agenda 21. Then I came across on another video, and you can look up these keywords. There's a document called Global Biodiversity Assessment. So you wonder what all this global warming stuff is all about. It's not about global warming. It's not about global cooling. It's not about climate change. It is about population reduction. And so they're using excuses, which we can clearly see. Agenda 21, global warming, biodiversity, sustainability. And they're using terrorism as a fear tactic to be able to allow them to move into position and get public support for something very evil that is coming. The New World Order, the New Age. It's a 1,140-page book. I take notes when I watch these videos. I have a good memory also. If you're watching my videos, you're aware of that. So it has 1,140 pages and 993 page at page 993. There is section 13. I thought that was interesting. That's the death card in Terra and witchcraft. The last 200 pages on section 13, they plan on turning more than 50% of the United States into wildland projects, and human beings will be barred from those lands. And again, I'm going to say, who the heck do these people think they are? And when we read this book, it's going to make more sense. The Black Sun. Who the heck do they think they are? And you're not going to believe what I found. And it boils down to the gateway of the gods is all the desert area in the Middle East with those pyramids and sphinxes and many other monuments buried in sand that they can now see with the satellites in space and other equipment. There's something much bigger afoot. The return of Nibiru, this planet X, the celestial body. It's everywhere. We even have some new movies coming up. They're telling us. The movies, the TV shows, the mind control, the programming. I write essays on the short essays, comments on the press releases. And I can tell by some of the people who get aggressive if I mention Christianity or Jesus or God. They say, hey, that's been proven false. People are believing the program. Or I believe there's a lot of them on there that are what they call trolls that are part of paid people to do this. And there are videos on people confessing, quitting their jobs as these paid trolls, and coming clean on videos you can watch. So a little bit more about my recent marathon of videos I've been watching the last few days. Marjorie Cameron, one of the characters in this book, said something bad is coming to Earth. And she wanted to get back to Mars, where was her birthplace. She was a psychic. To avoid a perilous event to take place on Earth, to usher in a new age. So they manifest stuff through ritual sex magic. If you take a map or a globe and you look at the 33 degrees, sites of many famous events. It's like the city of Phoenix is there. We're talking about the rise of Phoenix, the burning of everything to create the new world. I was on a video I watched. So there's so many signs here. The Aryans, or I guess apparently some kind of cult of people, like Hitler was into. It's an Aries sign. Just reading my notes here. 1918, Lamb was one of those beings that looked like a gray. And Aleister Crowley was in communication with Lamb at Montauk. So it looks like a gray alien. And as we said, Babylon means gateway to the gods. So apparently these beings, Hiwas and Lamb, look like gray aliens that Aleister Crowley was in communication with. And that prompted him to write a lot of material and get a hold of a lot of technical information, which they were using at NASA and that underground base at Project Montauk, at the Montauk Air Force Base. And then I watched another video called Targeted Individuals, and I keep saying this over and over, and I like people watching my videos. I like the thumbs up. I like for my stuff to get out there and people to get educated. But I do have some things I like people to go look at to see where I got some of this information from. It's invaluable. I want to send people to these sites. And one of them is Miles Johnston, Johnston, and he does something called the Bases Theory, B-A-S-E-S. But Bases Theory 52, this guy Kieron, K-I-E-R-O-N, Lee Perion Kieron, was a targeted individual, and on that Basis Theory 52, Miles Johnston, you can find it on YouTube with those keywords. He's got x-rays of his head and his body where he's been electronically equipped, I guess with control equipment. They can see know what he's thinking and doing and where he's at, and they can force him to do things. So it's a transmitter receiver. And of course we know now there are microchipping children in California, Texas, and even in Florida. A friend of mine sitting at lunch one day said, "Oh, that's no big deal. The American Legion is doing that every Thursday, and people are bringing in their children." So they have been experimenting with this, and I think probably the experimental stage is over. They have supercomputers. The sustainability and that other issue I talked about, that biodiversity assessment book, 1,140 pages, which I ordered it today, and I think I paid like $9.50, and there seem to be a couple more on the abebooks.com really cheap. And I notice when I do get these books and I check back 6 months later, they're $100, $200. So if anybody wants to get into a little collector's book thing, but it's completely unbelievable, out of the United Nations, called Biodiversity, and they plan on making 50% or more of the land in the USA off limits to humans. All connected by corridors. Knowing that Aleister Crowley's incommunicado with those gray alien type beings. And then we saw on this page, we got this Montauk and these cults, black sun cults. There's something sinister afoot. So Hiawassee, and from my notes here, was taught Aleister Crowley, known as the evilest man alive, do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. Now, I know people want to think there's something good about the New Age and don't want to believe in Christianity and Jesus or any other religion and want to believe what they want to believe. But listen to this. This is my notes here from watching the video. Hiawassee taught Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. And he said, I am the God of war and vengeance. That was Aleister Crowley's holy guardian angel. And I talked to a lot of people. And they go, I got spirit guides, guardian angels. I believe in the spiritual world there are good beings. Those of us who leave planet Earth and go to heaven will be spiritual beings. And of course Jesus said, I am the path. Believe in me, and you shall be saved. And Rabbi Marvin Antelman, writing that book, to eliminate the opate, volume 1 and volume 2, opate means the belief in God, the comfort that you get from the belief in God. The healing, even when Jesus was doing healings and casting out unclean spirits. These evil people that are incommunicado with these holy guardian angels, obviously from the Lucifer world. I am the God of war and vengeance. And so many people tell me, Rick, you're crazy. Aleister Crowley, he was a good guy. The world needs to be balanced. A little bit of good, a little bit of evil. Keeps everything okay. It's part of the lies and propaganda. Crowley was also named Phoenix. He was a member of created the Order of the Eastern Temple. Age of communion with the God. Remember, this is the age of Aquarius. Even have a song, Age of Aquarius. There's so much going on that people don't understand. There are those biorhythms to reality. The 12 astrological signs is actually 13, but the 12, I'm an Aquarian. Sagittarius, Leo, Pisces. Jesus was born at the beginning of the age of Pisces. And probably not on the exact day. I think there's 100 or so years, 200 years, that it's like a null area between two ages where they do the shift. So they talk to the gods, here you go, in ancient Hebrew and Greek Kabbalah. Here we go with the Kabbalah. I keep saying this stuff. The secret mystery schools of Babylon. That's what all these Masonic lodges are. Babylon means the gateway to the gods. Ancient Hebrew and Greek Kabbalah is the talk to the gods. The satanic sexual and sacrificial rituals and drinking blood and eating flesh are tools to manifest things in this reality, whether it be beings or actions. Hitler was into this. Secret chiefs of the Great White Brotherhood. So I just thought I'd let you know, between the videos I made here on this subject, it prompted me to do a little bit of research because the information was a bit bizarre. So chapter 4 in this book, the Black Sun, another cult. An ancient cult. Look at the picture of the sun in the back. Now you see where I got the idea that, whoa, this thing about planet Nibiru, planet X, also called the Destroyer. The red star. Looks like charcoal in space. It doesn't glow like our sun. So anyways, the Cameron lineage, apparently this name Cameron is pretty important. So I'll go review this a little bit and move on quickly in this book. When Ron Hubbard engaged in the Babylon working. Babylon working. Babylon means the gateway to the gods. With Jack Parsons, the guy who helped start up the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, our whole Space Center. And Marjorie Cameron, who was apparently the wife of Parsons and who ran off with Hubbard, or something like that. The wife of Hubbard ran off with Parsons. I want to get it backwards here, but it'll unfold here as we move along. So I did go on YouTube and I looked up some Jack Parsons and the occult, and wow, there's some videos to watch. I went and looked up Preston Nichols. Wow, some videos to watch. And then you had Duncan Cameron. Wow, videos right there. A very interesting thing to get involved in for a couple weeks, and you'll walk away going, man, I didn't know that. Space Center's knee-deep, neck-deep, probably even up to here into this stuff, the occult. The symbolism's all on all their logos, and even with Washington, D.C., United Nations, they all use these logos. I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. We talked about the Zionist Jewish folks who are all into the Kabbalah, the magic, magicians, world controllers, financiers. And all these groups are completely aware of the sky spraying. You can go outside and look up, or look on YouTube and see all the videos. Take pictures, make your own videos like I do. Now think about it. All these people are into their religion. Just like I grew up Catholic. I don't identify so much with that anymore. I'm not happy with the way with the Catholic Church, the things I've discovered. But I do believe in Jesus. I do believe in God. I do believe in the Ten Commandments. And if one good reason. It's the best thing out there, the best religion out there, the Ten Commandments. If people weren't killing and stealing and adultery and sexual perversions, we'd have a much better harmonious planet. Which occurred to me again, wait a minute. If people went with Jesus and Christianity and other religions, even old ancient tribes with shamans, they had the rules of like commandments, then we would have a harmonious, decent, structured world and society. But you see, that's the problem. All these other religions into the occult, the secret mystery schools of Babylon, don't want a decent, social, structured society, harmonious. They say it. Even Hitler said it in one of the videos I was watching. They want chaos and anarchy. They want to reverse the domestication of men. Just like your little dog or your little cat is domesticated. 100 years, 1,000 years, they were wild in the wild, the ones that are purebreds. Vicious. A group of them would attack you and try to eat you. But they're domesticated. We now give them dog food and cat food and love. Everybody's in harmony. But Hitler said it in one of the videos, and all the stuff I'm reading. They want to bring back a world of chaos and anarchy. They want to get rid of the middle class. They want a small elite group of people, like on the Hunger Games movie, and all the population that they allowed to live, about 500 million worldwide, 6 billion have to die, will be virtual slaves. This is the return of the global age. And they want these people to be undomesticated. They want them to be fierce, bloodthirsty. Probably like Rome, where they put people in the arena to fight with swords, or be eaten by lions, or tortured. Sex slaves, worker slaves. Killing people for entertainment. Apparently, a lot of these things existed before the Great Flood. which apparently is why maybe, if there is a spiritual God, which I believe there is, that the whole situation on earth had to be erased. It had gotten out of control. Went off on the tangent of anarchy and chaos. And God, in his infinite wisdom, maybe he said, this cannot stand. And a great flood. And apparently some intelligent beings, with the Hopi Indians and the Noah and his ark, and all over the world there are stories from the ancient tribes. Ecuador with the caverns there in Eric von Daniken's books I showed you. These gigantic caves were made, equipped with supplies. It's for people to survive. They wanted a remnant of the human race to survive. Because they had to change the world from the ugliness that had reared its head so large that the whole world was in chaos and anarchy and insane for all practical purposes, except for the elites at the top who were thriving and living in this opulent world. Evil characters, most likely, eventually. Maybe it started out with some decent entities and humans on the planet, but it got way out of control. If you read some of the old books on Atlantis and history. And we know about the monuments in Egypt, Lebanon, Peru, Ecuador, China, India, all over the world, Russia, even Antarctica, even in the Arctic. Up there in Alaska, I went over that Nexus magazine, a gigantic pyramid underground. And then with the one with the Busiji Mountain, in the first book of this series with Peter Moon that I've been reviewing, we went over. So they had something go on, Babylon Working, with Jack Parsons, the creator of, one of the creators of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They used to joke and call it the Jack Parsons Laboratory, who apparently was with Marjorie Cameron. I guess she left her husband for this other guy. That started that little feud between them. And that there's the Wilson name seems to be popular back then, involved in Montauk. And Ron Hubbard's involved in this whole story, science and Scientology. See, everything comes together. I keep saying that. So moving on, all three participants emerged from the Babylon Working, with which is often termed the magical current. Magical current, Babylon Working. It was alluded to in the book Encounter in the Pleiades, an inside look at UFOs. So I'm going to dwell more on the UFO issue. I have sincere belief that it's totally tied into this Babylon Working, the gateway to the gods, evicting the people from the Middle East, forcing them in their claims of terrorism into the EU and the United States, saying we are all under threat by situations created by our own governments called false flags, using crisis actors. And there is a purpose, without a doubt. The New World Order and a new age. So I was in direct recipient of this current thought through the personage of Hubbard. My synchronistic meeting with Marjorie Cameron completed the circuit, literally initiated my active involvement in the Montauk phenomenon. Abducting little boys, apparently having time tunnels, pushing them through, experimenting with them, mind programming them as slaves and sex slaves, and apparently, some research I've done in the videos I've been watching, there are possibly 1 million mind control people dispersed throughout the United States right now. So, in any event, they could trigger any of these people anytime they want. People who don't even know they're under these mind control programs. And they could go out there and start shooting up black people in churches. People in San Bernardino. I don't know. But it all seems to be true. That they have these technologies and they've been researching it and perfecting it. And they do have an ultimate aim. If one follows my personal involvement with Montauk, there is obviously an outside influence working in my own life and was alluded to in the introduction to this book. And I'm going to say now, what is the old saying? Seek and ye shall find. The truth shall set you free. And I'm without a doubt, I believe, because of things that have come into my world, that once you tune in, the universe tunes into you. And the synchronicities and the different books I go through and the in-depth commentary I make and the stuff I learn and the things I see, sometimes I don't go looking for it. The dominoes just fall right in front of me. And apparently 85% of the people on planet Earth are in a zombie-like mind-controlled state, certainly a state of denial, don't even acknowledge how ridiculous it is that the warring and mayhem and chaos and anarchy in the Middle East, controlled by largely Israel. Israel will take over all that properties the size of like the United States, like they did in the last 60 years when they started out with a small portion of the Palestine's land, and now they have wound up with a large portion, and now the Palestinians have a small portion, and they want to get rid of the last remnant of them, and they are working towards that. And they want to destroy Syria, which sits right to the northeast, borders Israel. And of course they have to destroy probably Lebanon, and then they will go after Iran. In the meantime, they will cause chaos and anarchy all over the world, so that most of us are distracted and not paying attention to what they're doing over there. So it seems. You get what you ask for. So like I said, when you start doing research, start asking questions, you get what you ask for. There is a God. We are spiritual beings, after all. When we leave these physical bodies, we do go somewhere. And these people we're talking about, Aleister Crowley, Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, and all these people in the mystery schools of Babylon, and all the Masonic lodges, Freemasons, Yorkite, Rosicrucian, and so many names I can't even think about. I was watching a video by another documentary, and the man was just spilling off so many names I never even heard of. These different cults. There's just such a mountain, thousands. Beware of the Rainbow by Constance Coombe. We went over her book. Thousands of these cults. Witches' covens everywhere. Many of them on Long Island, everywhere. People meeting, sacrificing people, having these rituals, communicating with beings. Apparently some people in a different kind of DNA that they can shapeshift back into a reptilian self. My personal interest in furthering my own consciousness led me to Montauk and thence the Cameron connection. The Camerons and Wilsons revealed themselves as a genetic window, so persons with certain DNAs, through which an external non-human consciousness can manifest, sometimes through the principle of synchronicity. We all know about going to see a medium, which was interesting. I was at a party watching the football game, Carolina and led the team. I'll think of it in a minute. And one of the guests at the party was a young lady, and she was a medium, and I said, you know, drinking a beer, and I said, well, what can you tell me about me? And she said, well, you're a teacher. Not kidding. And she says you pay attention to detail. And I'm drinking a beer, and I go, well, you don't have to do this. We're at a party. Because first she said she didn't want to, you know, where she had a beer, glass of wine, whatever. And then a few minutes later, she goes, you know, I see something else. And she's looking up like, she's looking up here. She goes, I see something else. She goes, there's this woman with white hair. Wants to tell you something. And she said she wants to tell you she didn't believe before she died. She didn't believe. So she didn't believe in the spiritual world before she died. And then she says, I see something else. She goes, your life's going to change. You're going to make a big move in February. So then I'm having lunch on Sunday. That was Saturday. And of course I picked up my fortune cookie. Prepare yourself for a change of events in your personal life. So I'm not superstitious. I just thought when you talk about synchronicity, I laughed to myself when I got the fortune cookie. I said, wow, what did that medium say? And anyways, the woman with the white hair was, in my opinion, obviously my grandmother, who supported me in my endeavors to leave engineering at Space Center and go into business for myself. And there was only a few people who said, yeah, Rick, you can do it. And of course, a lot of family members said, no, you got to stay with your job. You can't have your own company, your own business. You can't do what you want. A lot of people don't have the faith. But with God, all things are possible. I think Jesus said that in St. Mark. You got to believe. And even with the disciples of Jesus would complain that they couldn't heal as many people and do the things Jesus did. And of course he said, ye of such little faith. And I think he also said, you shall do greater things than I. That's a metaphor to us. So I do believe in this larger world than we humans, because none of us get off Earth alive. Except maybe some of these demonic people with other kind of DNA. Apparently there's some kind of technologies and stuff that they keep hidden that does enable them to live a long time. 1,000 years maybe, hundreds of years. And also they're able to clone a human being. And then when the person is old, they have the other person die, the person they want to clone, and the spirit rises up out of the body and goes into the clone because your spirit is attracted to your own frequency. So apparently the silver cord will just move from you to instead of going back up into the ether, heaven, wherever, or Hades for those people who might not be so nice. So apparently those technologies are available. And some of that stuff's in these books. The role of genetics is intensely important when we consider the interdimensional potential. See what I'm saying? In this book. The Black Sun. Peter Moon. Go buy the book. Interdimensional potential of an activity such as Babylon working. They're trying to open the portals to the gateway to the gods. And apparently CERN has had some serious issues. There's videos on YouTube that they had to shut it down. It blew a gasket, so to speak. Big holes right out the side of it. Did they accomplish what they wanted? Did they open the portal to the gateway to the gods? Is this whole reality, these things they're making movies about, I was watching today, a short trailer, is it all about to happen? They put all those troops with Jade Helm everywhere for a reason. They built all those FEMA camps for a reason. They bought hollow point bullets for a reason. They got that biodiversity 1,160 pages out of the United Nations for a reason. Agenda 121 document, and they're putting it with, involving it with all our community leaders. Can't speak right. All over the country. They're moving forward with something. All right, let's see if I can just get some of this book done. The DNA in each cell contains a blueprint not only for the human body, but for the entire consciousness and manifestation of the universe itself. So says Peter Moon. As we have learned in the Montauk Saga, the genetics of the Cameron clan seem to highlight the exact configuration in the DNA biocomputer necessary for trafficking from one dimension to another. Least we forget down there in Peru with the Ashka Wushka Haushka vine drug they take. I'm sure I'm saying that name wrong. That the shamans would go into a trance and go to the other side to get cures for people who were ill, or even solve problems and disputes between the tribes. They were incommunicado with another dimension of entities. The names Parson and Crowley fit into this same mix as well. So you get Crowley involved with NASA. And people really believe we went to the moon. That's another story. This external source is trying to get a message across. At this stage of the game, my personal observations tell me this message is actually a method by which to trace lost knowledge of ourselves and the mystery of the universe. Robert Wilson, an author of many books on the occult, has stated that when you arrive at horizons of the consciousness, you will encounter the principle of synchronicity. You could also say that once you've learned everything there is to learn in this world, you will enter the world of time and its paradoxes. They are gateways to the incredible and the miraculous. You know, I only read my highlighted portion, but on these 2 pages, I highlighted a lot. And again, I do book reviews to add a little credibility into the research, because a lot of people will say, I don't know what to believe. It's too bizarre. And I don't think anybody wants to take 10 or 11 years like I did and lose most of what you own and have worked 40 years for. So I decided that after I'd read all those books, to make videos to help people get a jump start and add a little credibility by having the books, showing the books. And then, of course, my commentary comes from all those years of research and videos and magazines and press releases and observing with my own eyes. You start to get being able to put the puzzle together. Imagine if somebody gave you a puzzle and the label had been torn off, or you borrowed it at a flea market. What is it? Are all the pieces in there? And you start putting it together on the kitchen table and you get the outline all done. You don't know what it is. You put some more together. A little piece over here looks like a tree and a little water. You don't know what it is. But you're up to 100 pieces. That's what it is like to be a researcher. You can read 100 books, and you're just getting the outline of the puzzle together. But then, after you get to 101, 120, 130, you all of a sudden start to see the whole picture. Babylon working, the gateway to the gods, the destruction of the Middle East, the war between the North and the South of the United States, World War I, World War II, all planned. Vietnam War. You can go on YouTube and watch the documentaries. The details are coming out every day, which is a concerning issue unto itself. Because the more this stuff comes out, the more the powers that be, those elitists, possibly with some strange DNA that turns into reptilians, definitely into the occult and the satanic mystery schools of Babylon, with Masonic lodges and temples and facilities and control of even colleges and governments and councils all over the world, have been gearing up and preparing for, it looks like, an attack on civilization. It'll be the governments of the world against their own peoples. So I thought by making these videos, you could sit back with a cold beer or a cup of coffee, watch a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the afternoon, and somebody has done a book review. And to get a little bit of credibility, I would highly suggest people go buy the books, read the books, and that's why I turn it over and show you. It's all about seeking the truth. These Camerons, apparently these particular bloodlines of people, practice a tradition that goes way back in time. Their ancestors were put to death for practicing their ancient family tradition, which is centered around the rituals of distant Picts and Druids. Here we get to the Druids again. The Druids are in this. There's many names. The Zionists, the Occultists, the Kabbalists, the Druids, the Jesuits, the Church of Satan, the crowds in Hollywood into the satanic rituals, which I've shown you, which we'll go over again. I got a couple books on that. We don't need the books. We can just watch the TV tube. Well, they don't use tubes anymore. The TV screen. Which leads to another issue. The flat screens seem to be involved in more mesmerization and mind control. Moving on. Noticing her reddish blonde hair. These are probably some of the traits of this particular DNA. And very fair skin, I couldn't help but recognize a distinct resemblance to both Marjorie Cameron and Diane Hubbard, the daughter of Ron Hubbard. I didn't know he had a daughter. There was no mistaking it, and I was rather shocked. I consequently realized that I have become quite adept at recognizing the genetic structure of this clan. Lady Cameron explained that her lineage has served as the guardians of the unified field. She accelerated the pace when she said that one of the biggest challenges of her clan had been to learn how to sublimate their sexual energy. This refers, of course, to the bipolar forces of creation, the yin and the yang, or whatever you want to call it. Lady Cameron said her family had not used this energy in its conventional format in the past and has consistently wrestled with it. So these people with these particular DNA have some psychic forces or abilities other than others, something to do with their sexual energy. Lady Cameron's family history goes back many millennia and was passed down orally. Celtic lore and ritual, but her understanding and presentation of it is dramatic and unique. She is highly intelligent. Part of her rituals include painting the body in blue colors. Remember the movie Avatar? Last time I read about that in, I think, this book here. And an hour later I went to turn on the TV and the movie Avatar was on. Synchronicity. And that's what keeps me doing these videos and this research. I've tried to walk away numerous times, but things would plop down right in front of me. And I look up and I go, okay, I get it. I'll do it. Not that I'm anything special. Anybody who seeks shall find. In my opinion. The door is open to anyone. The door to the heavenly realm or the door to Hades. And if there's going to be a new earth with this golden age, could wind up with 2,000 years of Hades on earth. Is that it? Do you want to be here? This one Cameron lady in this book said, when I started this video, she wanted to get off this planet and go back to Mars where she was born. She doesn't want to be here when the event happens. She teaches that according to Celtic traditions, We are part of a unified field that retains the awareness of the Creator. The womb is viewed as a vehicle of return. So through the womb, when you are born, is how you return back to earth, if there's such a thing as reincarnation. We all come back through it and are capable of retaining our identity. So maybe these occultists, there's another interesting, concerning issue. Maybe they figured out how to remember who they are when they're reborn. Wow. Just using the brain, thinking. It says it here. Retain our identity. Page 57. A Shama, such as herself, exists to connect us with the sacred. In this regard, sacred refers to the subtle state of consciousness, which are too often taken for granted, and if they are recognized at all. The best shamanic method, helping one to reach the sacred, is through direct energetic transmission. After that, the best way is through sound and symbols. Hence all the symbols and TV programming we're getting. Storytelling and lectures would be used most effective means. The next most effective means. We're almost through with the Cameron chapter. Lady Cameron received much of her own shamanic legacy, being a Shama, by a telepathic link in her own genetic line. This is a form of direct energetic transmission. And lest we forget the 100th monkey syndrome, if you don't know what that is. They had a problem on a particular island. I guess the bananas had died. So they were introducing the monkeys into avocados. And apparently the monkeys got a little irritated by peeling the thing and dropping it in the sand or whatever and eating it. So some people working with the program tried to teach a few monkeys how to do it. To even go by a stream and wash it off. And so they could teach a few and teach a few and teach a few. But after they reached a certain pinnacle, 100 monkeys on just a certain portion of the island, all of a sudden, all the monkeys knew how to do it. That particular tribe, clan of monkeys, were all connected. And think about it. I was watching a couple years ago a robin make a nest. And then feed the babies, just like, you look at it, it's almost like humans. Little babies were picking their little heads up, screaming like children, and mommy would come along with the food in her mouth and feed it to them. And I watched these male and female robins make the nest, hatch the eggs, feed the babies, and the babies fly off. It was a very interesting spring. But it occurred to me, how did those babies know in their own little minds, not very big, small minds, I wasn't trying to do a 666. I see that when I look at my camera when I do that, and I know when I see politicians do it on stage, I'm like, wait a minute. But anyways, they know because it's part of their DNA. It's a DNA intuition programmed into them. So we know the monkeys are that way, and then scientists have figured out that all the different breeds of creatures all over the world have this programming. And so do humans. Humans can be retrained. And that's what they're doing with all this propaganda, all this terrorism, all these shootings, all these sustainability, all this global warming, all this rhetoric, all this posturing, all these wars, all these threats of pollution, all this stuff. They're altering our consciousness. They're readying us for something. And it's not going to be good. They're not doing it for our benefit. It becomes apparent that the world is crawling with Camerons, people of that DNA, who have different agendas. There you go. So just like all those monkeys or robins and other creatures having programmed and having a community consciousness, these beings with other DNA on our planet, apparently they call them reptilians, whatever, blue bloods, but apparently they don't have any capacity for compassion or mercy. Just the opposite is they thrive on creating fear and destruction. That's their food and happiness for life. Might bode us all well if we were to pay attention and start looking into this. We can't deal with these people unless we wake up and realize what we are dealing with. And Rabbi Marvin Antelman didn't write that book to eliminate the opate, the belief in God, for nothing. Volume 1 and Volume 2. And all those other books I went over. They're trying to wake up people. And they don't want you to believe in God because they know when you pray and you believe, you affect the group consciousness. And they can't control that. So they have to eliminate the belief in God and make people believe in the absurd and the insane and the completely illogical. Men should not be marrying men. Women marrying women. Press releases like I've gone over in my videos. That two married women spend more time with their children. Crazy thinking. I realize the world is a harder place and people who have to spend less time with their children, but it's because economic pressures have been put on the populations to create that problem. So they can bring about their new age and new world order for themselves. Remember, they are cold-blooded, reptilian type of DNA creatures. And apparently, most of the politicians are in bed with them. And I mean that literally. The sex and stuff rituals coming out like the Bohemian Grove, where Alex Jones snuck in there. Go watch that video if you haven't already seen it. And the men are dressed in long robes, naked underneath. And they bring in, I guess, homosexuals. Women not allowed. Have a big, gigantic statue of Moloch. In this book. And Moloch can be either the bull or an owl. Represented by, with a big fireplace in the belly of the owl, Moloch. Throwing in a baby called the cremation of care. Go watch the video if you haven't seen it. Screeching and howling like a witch's ritual. And an Arizona Wilder, I said in the last video, with David Icke. Please go look that up. Arizona Wilder, David Icke, YouTube, and their conversation. Her descriptions of being an insider in the Illuminati. And yes, they get dressed up in robes, naked. They uncloak. Shapeshift back into their reptilian form. Children, babies, laying on altars, they viciously attack them, drink their blood, eat the flesh. It's one nasty affair, and it comes from more than one source, many sources that I've been researching. I'm reading it here in Peter Moon's book, some stuff. They have different agendas. Some are good and some are bad. Lady Cameron struck me being very much on the good side. And like I said, I'm not so sure that all these different kind of entities are evil. Just like all the Jewish people are not evil. And I think a lot of Jewish people that are not in on this ought to look into this and ought to speak up too. They might be privy to much more inside information. And I do have a comment section below. I would like to be fed some more information that I should know for my videos. For those of you who are watching this. I realize it takes a lot to be able to look into this stuff and admit this stuff. My situation is reverse. As I grew up Catholic, I went to church on Sunday. The traditional Catholic, going to church, get on your knees, doing the ritual and all that. But all the stuff in the news, like everybody else, caused me to back away from the church. No lying here. And I was a good person. I still believed in God. Had my boats and parties and beer and Jimmy Buffett and reggae music down there in Florida on the coast. A good life. Snorkeling, diving, surfing. Nice restaurants, barbecues. Good life. Thank you, God. And then I saw the world crumbling before me. My business, I'd go see my clients, and the economy was going down. We're all aware of this. Everybody was losing homes. From Argentina to Canada, New York, Florida, California, Germany. And as an educated, semi-educated man, I said, wait a minute. They cannot just be stupid managers, city managers, planners, banksters, business leaders, government leaders. Everywhere. They all can't just be stupid. There's something wrong with this picture. It has to be intentional. And I didn't know where it was going to lead me. But sure enough, I guess once you realize that the satanic forces are real, then of course God is real. And I've had an out-of-body experience in 1996. Or was it 86? I have to think about it. I think it was 86. And so I saw myself, like I'm seeing myself on this video now. And I looked over in the kitchen and I saw the refrigerator. And I'm not 6 foot tall, 5'8". And the top of it was all black. It was a white refrigerator. I've said this in my previous videos. While I'm floating at the ceiling, looking at myself, looking at the TV, looking at the clock. And to make the story short, there's more involved. But anyways, at some point I panicked and said, wait a minute, have I died? I went back into my body, laying on the couch looking up. So then I sat up. And I, like you or anybody else, I said, was that a dream? And I remembered the refrigerator. It was black on top. So I walked over to it, got a chair, stood on it, and sure enough, it was black. You could write your name on the oil and grease and dust. So anyways, I became more religious and believing in God and Jesus since I started my research. It's just overwhelming. These people are into black magic. They're sacrificing people, drinking blood, scaring people out of their wits to create some kind of hormone in the blood before they drink it, when they sacrifice them. It puts them in some kind of euphoric state, like they're on some kind of drug. Maybe they have interdimensional communication and can raise their psychic awareness and consciousness in an evil way. So anyways, Ewan Cameron was the opposite. Again, we can see forces of evil fighting for control of the Cameron genetic pool. So I'm reading this book, and I know they want a sample of everybody's DNA on the planet. They want to X-ray everybody who travels through the airport and other places, and they're monitoring people with cell phones and computers and everything else, cameras everywhere. There's something going on here. You have to read between the lines and put it together. Anyways, the synchronicity of the matter accelerated further when I met Lord Cameron. I found him an even more interesting than Lady Cameron. He had some sort of past connection to Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive. The OTO, the Order of the Babylon Order, Mystery School. But he was not affiliated with it presently. Lord Cameron expressed surprise at how I could have run across so much of my information without being an OTO member. He began telling me of his own foray into magic at the age of 13, when he suddenly found himself sacrificing a goat. Wow, this information's pretty bizarre. But after watching all those videos for the last week or two, while doing this particular series on Peter Moon, with Jack Parsons and Project Montauk and Preston Nichols, and wow, even I am learning much more than the acceleration on this New World Order is obvious. It'd be really hard not to see it anymore. I don't know if I mentioned it, but that 1,160-page book that I discovered today by watching another video, Global Biodiversity Assessment. Yeah, I did mention it. There's that memory thing again. $9.50. How the brain is, I almost said 900. When you're speaking off the cuff, you know, you gotta slow down and take it easy. But 1,140 pages out of the United Nations. And we've been going over my books on the sustainability, global warming, Agenda 21. So here we go. So he was sacrificing a goat at the age of 13. Do you see what I'm saying? This is concerning. How can somebody not believe in God when these people are sacrificing goats and people drinking blood and communicating with beings that look like gray aliens, and even Aleister Crowley writing the book of the law? And then, of course, we went over the Bible, the Gospel of St. Mark, and I'm going to go over another book in the Bible and another one until I exhaust all those also. We'll look at this whole program. What's going on in the world? What is going on? So anyways, I highlighted another sentence here that must be the Cameron's genetics at work. They were instances of animal sacrifices, was only one side of his life. Gaelic through my mother, my maiden name was Sweeney. That's what he told Mr. Cameron. After a few sentences, he looked at me quizzingly and asked me a question. So you're a Sweeney, are you? That's right, I said. Lord Cameron then identified a woman he knew whose lineage was both Sweeney and Cameron. Me personally, I'm half German and half Irish. Probably a little French on the German side. And who knows what else on the Irish side out of Boston. My mother and father met at Macy's in New York City. Just saying. My grandmother worked at the Bath Iron Works, or those facilities on the coast of New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Welder during World War II, welding in submarines. Of course, I went in the Army when I was 17, got out before I was 21, went to use my GI Bill to go to technical school, worked at a major aerospace company after a couple short stints at two other electronic firms, Digital Corporation. First, I went to Centronics right out of school, which made printers, if you remember the old Centronic printers. And then I worked at Digital Corporation in Hudson, Londonderry area, New Hampshire. I grew up in Maine. And then I went to Florida and I worked at a major aerospace company near the Kennedy Space Center from 79 to 89. And after that, I decided to go into business for myself, and I've worked for myself for 25 years. And I've always been a reader. I've done a lot of traveling, many powerboats, big ones, offshore, intercoastal waterway, fishing. I've led a good life. And then I got into sailing for 5 years. I had a big sailboat. I sailed to the Bahamas. I sailed up and down the intercoastal. I was sailing 5 out of 7 days a week, running my business from the sailboat. And let me tell you, when you're an honest businessman, it's harder to do business. It's a challenge. So moving on here. Lord Cameron then identified a woman he knew whose lineage was both Sweeney and Cameron. I got into that conversation just because we're talking about names here. Share a little bit. Went back at least 4 generations. In fact, he said, she was one of the wealthiest people in the world, and underwrites Yale University, rather shocking. Now telling me that I am genetically connected to the Klan. The rest of this book is not so personal, but this information will play an interesting role later on. So even Peter Moon's getting a little personal about himself in this book. So I got a little personal about myself in this video. And the next chapter on this book is the Kennedy Connection. So I'll take right off, and probably that'll be the end of this video. The Cameron Connection to the Brotherhood of the Snake, as relayed by Anna in Chapter 3, ties this clan right to the Nazi Germany. Brotherhood of the Snake. Camerons and Kennedys. There was the reference to the founding of the KKK. The Cameron and the Kennedys. KKK. Remember, K is the 11th letter of the alphabet, which is 66 in numerology. A is 6, B is 12, C is 18. You just keep adding 6. So KKK would be 66666. 6 sixes. Ouch. That sounds kind of evil. And also that the reported connected between Ian Cameron and Joseph Kennedy. That would be John's father. Both are obviously of Gaelic descent. And there is also a further story connecting the Kennedys to the Montauk program. Phenomenon. Now, I know Kennedy had to be an insider to be president. But some of these people, even like Lincoln, they want to do the right thing. And so then, of course, they get assassinated. And I think, from watching another video, I get so much information. So far, there have been 9 presidents who have been assassinated. So these Masonic lodges, Jewish temples by the Zionist ones, not the good ones, and other Mystery School of Babylon and Church of Satan type groups, Kabbalah, Rosicrucianum, and many other names, Knights of Columbus, Knights of Malta, high places, high people in the Vatican, the UN, the presidency, Washington, D.C., all the insiders. They know what's going on. They're behind all this stuff. They're the problem. There's only a few of them. And they want to eliminate most of us. And with computers and technologies, they know what we're doing, where we're coming and we're going. And whenever they push that button on their computer to identify the threats, whenever they try to pull off the New World Order, martial law, police state, they will know who to go after. Let's hope there's too many of us that are awake that they won't even think about it. But they want to disarm us first. Anyways, going off on my thoughts here, we're talking about KKK. Anyways, her name was Charlotte. She was already a professional writer who had also served as editor for some of the major publishing houses. So he's going to meeting a new person now. Peter Moon's an investigator like I am. He wrote this book. I make videos. Truth Seekers. Claudette said the Montauk story was too weird, and she did not want to get involved. I can understand that. The videos I've been watching this last 2 weeks, a little bit over the top. And even though she had once seen a UFO emerge out of the water in the Bermuda Triangle, we've gone over that before, her appearance in my life proved to be laced with synchronicity. She ended up teaching me some crucial points about the art of writing. She also had some remarkable tales to tell that relate to our story. Claudette also mentioned that they had a boat at Montauk and would often vacation there. And I'm not reading everything. I highlighted portions when I pre-read all this stuff, which prompted me to do research and watch a bunch of videos. Her husband would disappear for the longest time, So they would go to Montauk, vacation on their big boat, and her husband would disappear for a long time. Apparently there are underground caverns out there at the end of Long Island, and apparently that's where the underground base is, and all kinds of other mysterious goings-on. Claudette knew he was an important scientist, as he personally constructed part of the lunar module, which was used to land on the moon. And then it says here, again he disappeared, only this time it was into an elevator positioned in the middle of nowhere. So he goes in the middle of nowhere and there's an elevator taking him down into the earth. On Montauk, on Long Island. Alright, moving on. Crazy stuff. Although there were no mishaps, she was shocked at the lack of standard security measures. The most bizarre story she had to tell was this German scientist's dealings with the late Robert Kennedy. She said that while Kennedy was Attorney General, he would sometimes visit their house in Queens. He always showed up in a limousine. Again, I'm not disparaging anybody here, I'm reading a book. Typified by her husband retrieving LSD sugar cubes from the refrigerator, which he and Bobby would consume and go tripping. Okay, it's highlighted on the bottom some of my notes. That Bobby Kennedy would have been involved in drugs has been portrayed above, also sheds new light onto the Marilyn Monroe controversy. Her death could have been inspired through one of the Ewan Cameron's agents or colleagues. She is known to have discussed JFK's desire to release information about UFOs to the public. The mystery of her death, which still hasn't subsided, has yet to be investigated from the occult perspective. Stuff you learn when you research. So I guess when her husband and Robert Kennedy would do LSD trips, they would stay around the house, and he would arrive in a limousine. I guess the rich and powerful like to have fun too. But our leaders shouldn't be doing that. Claudette said she hated Bobby Kennedy because every time he came over, her husband would become cruel and abuse her, most likely as a result of the LSD. Other antidotes linking the Kennedys to this line of high strangeness that is associated with the Nazis and Montauk. JFK Jr. is reported to be bisexual from an individual who claims to know him. JFK Jr. The homosexual element he encountered there. Kennedy's recent marriage may cause people to view these allegations skeptically, but press reports indicate serious trouble on that front. So I'm just reading my highlighted portion. So upset that the Kennedys that she fled back to her native Germany. At one point, reportedly, she had a hard time fitting into the strict confines of being a Kennedy woman. So if he was bisexual, it gives us plenty of cause to wonder when we consider the name of his magazine, George. George is used also by male gays to refer to one another. I didn't know that. Inspired name Boy George, the pop star of the 80s. So just some FYI stuff in this book. I am also told that JFK Jr. used to summer in Amagansett, a short drive from Montauk Point. I also read that this island was once the home of Bruno Hamptmann, a German who was electrocuted for kidnapping the Limburg baby. Probably a lot of things went on Long Island. But in its heyday, it was the place to live. It's still a nice place. This was during the 1930s. I'm reading my highlighted stuff, or I skipped a lot. It says here, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the poster boy for the Aryan genetics, also married into the Kennedy clan. We know that. Total Recall, there's something right there about mind control. A movie used as a device similar to the Montauk chair in its main theme. His psychic signature has literally been blasted over American airwaves by nature of this tremendous stardom. There is also a strange association between the Kennedys and the motion picture business. Father Joe was responsible for making the first talkies, working in partnership with a division of RCA. This was during the 1930s and coincides with the time Tesla began working with RCA, Nikola Tesla, under the family name Turbo. This puts the Kennedys in a position to rule over the beginnings of the sound business and potential audio subliminals. So they were using audio subliminals and mind control experiments back then. There's no doubt about that. We've all seen the funny commercials, not commercials, but movies and situations where people will be watching the movie theater and they flash a hamburger, but you can't see it unless you slow it down. And the guy looks at his girlfriend and goes, "Oh, I'm hungry. I gotta go get a hamburger or a hot dog." They've been working on these technologies. And of course, the Kennedys wouldn't have got into the presidencies and those powerful positions if they weren't connected. That's just FYI. Everybody knows that. But some of these people realize how bad it is and want to come clean, and then they wind up getting assassinated. According to Jewish film writer Ben H., Kennedy met with 50 leading Jewish filmmakers in Hollywood and told them to not publicly protest against Hitler and to make films offensive to the dictators of the Axis. He said it would impede victory over the Axis and make people feel it was a Jewish war was going on. Kennedy connections go deeper. In 1939, Kennedy agreed to fly to Paris for a high-level meeting with Helmut Wuthall, a German or Frenchman, the right-hand man of Rhine Marshal Goring, so it would have been a German, for discussions that included a U.S. gold loan to Hitler. A U.S. gold loan to Hitler in 1939. So these forces were building Hitler up. A gold loan to Hitler, that's the beginning of World War II, just prior to the beginning of the war. The meeting between Kennedy and Wuthall was called off before it could take place when President Roosevelt forbade it. So President Roosevelt, who got us into World War II, found out about Joe Kennedy, the leader of the Klan, willing to loan Germany money and gold, and Roosevelt forbade it. Roosevelt was outraged. At that point, MI-15, a British intelligence service, began to scrutinize Kennedy for suspicion of collusion with Britain's enemies. So because Britain was enemies with Germany, it was a threat to the British Empire over the German Empire. So it was all about manipulating our leaders here in the United States, which I've said before, which have gone over. And they put Roosevelt in the presidency because they could control him. And American people were siding with Germany. Remember, we had a Declaration of Independence with Britain. We didn't want to be under the king's rule. But apparently through the back door, when they created the Federal Reserve in 1913, they did take over the United States. And some situations in the 1800s. Apparently there was a foreclosure, bankruptcy in the United States. And they got some political power that way, prior to 1913. A few months later, Kennedy committed the most dubious act of his public career when he appointed Nazi sympathizer Tyler Kent to work as a code clerk in the London embassy. Kent was to be trusted with the most confidential telegrams that included those from Churchill and Kennedy to the president. So I'm thinking this is Joseph Kennedy, John's father. Tyler Kent's family was in the diplomatic corps, and he grew up overseas. He was well educated and spoke several languages. During his stay in Moscow under Ambassador William Bullitt, Kent determined from the diplomatic correspondence he read that Roosevelt was unconstitutionally leading the United States into war against Germany. Kennedy himself is believed to have opposed the war because he had substantial investments in Germany. Scotland Yard came upon Kent's apartment one afternoon and with the proper search warrant entered and found a host of telegrams and official correspondences. Kent was immediately arrested under the Official Secrets Act and was brought before Ambassador Kennedy. Kennedy acted outraged over the whole affair while Kent insisted his aim was to inform the American people of their duplicitous president. Now remember, Roosevelt had meetings prior to World War II and had cut off supplies of scrap steel and oil to Japan because Japan and Germany had a treaty that if anyone went to war with one, they went to war with the other. And the United States, controlled by the New York Zionist Jewish folks, banksters, secret mystery school of Babylon, Babylon working, the gateway to the gods, this new age, new world order, bribe and control our people with money and blackmail. Moving on, my highlighted portions here. His defense would have been that Roosevelt was conspiring for war. Kennedy, who had his own skeletons to hide, no question, waived diplomatic immunity for Kent, but only after receiving permission from the White House. The actual documents on Taylor Kent are still sealed from public view in the Roosevelt Library at Hyde Park, New York. Who would have thought that? All right, this is the last I got to do here. Although the Kennedys have been have a very dubious reputation, it should be remembered that they are not basically evil. Peter Moon. Some of these people get involved, like they join the Freemasonic Lodge. They don't know what they're getting into. They join the cult, they enjoy the New Age. They don't know what they get into. They buy the stuff on global warming on TV, the press releases, the sustainability. They don't know what's really going on. They don't know that it's all fabricated. There's an ulterior motive. They want a new world order, a new age. The elites want to live in opulence and a new golden age, and they want to enslave the masses that they allow to live. So many people have said it publicly. Ted Turner, Bill Gates, the prince over there in London. What's his name? Moving on, Lady Cameron introduced very strongly to me the idea of ancestral karma and how one particular clan will leave a karma independent of the various individuals within it. So I guess us humans, as a race of beings, are not all connected like the 100 monkey syndrome or the Robins I went over, but different DNA clans types are connected. Even probably in Africa, there are different types of black people. There are pygmies, there are shorter ones, taller ones, different facial structure. So even America, with the American Indians, they're all not the same. Cherokees, Apaches, the different bloodlines. So maybe they're somehow spiritually connected as a group. And one of the other spiritual connections is, of course, those who believe in God and Jesus and all that probably are connected to God and Jesus and the heavenly realm. And those who turn over to the dark side and do evil get possessed and connected to the dark side, which we read in St. Mark. Jesus was casting out unclean spirits. So when you do go to the dark side, you can more easily be possessed by these unclean spirits. Now to receive, I'm just theorizing here, thinking, when you do believe in God and accept Jesus as your Savior, can you be possessed or connected more strongly to the Holy Ghost? Just saying, these people that are in charge of this secret mystery school knowledge know a lot more than I do. I'm getting to the roots of some of this information. And I suppose if I keep going further, seeking and I shall find. we will get more and more knowledgeable about things we should know and advance as human beings and spiritual beings, which is the ultimate aim as far as I'm concerned. It'd be nice if across the universe, Earth was known for its intelligent, caring, merciful, good human beings, not evil monsters. Could you just see the warning billboards outside the planet? Don't stop here. They're all possessed by Satan and Lucifer. Let's make a little humor here. So anyways, moving on this Kennedy thing here. In spite of her darker side, the Kennedys are known to possess some humanitarian character traits. Moving on, there were no funds to pay for many answers from the various relatives, but Joseph Kennedy paid considerable sums out of his own pocket to see their messages were sent back to America. You can find plenty of humanitarian gestures with all the Kennedys if you read about the various histories. My purpose is to bring out the German and occult links in this remarkable family. It indicated that the Kennedys were genetically linked to the Camerons. This book said that both families traced their roots to the Scottish Isle of Skye, the Isle of Witches. Wow. Perhaps the Kennedys' mystique of Camelot is real magic at work, not just a media illusion. So we know the Kennedys are in the book of Fritz Springmeier's The Bloodlines of the Illuminati. All you know is that if JFK Jr. was ever nominated for president, he would be elected on the female vote alone. There is always a frenzy people feel when electing a Kennedy. It is magic. Anyways, we recognize that the same genealogy book identifies the meaning of the name Kennedy. Whoa, as ugly head. This does not mean the Kennedys were ugly in appearance. Most of the famous ones are considered good-looking and charming at the very least. Charisma is often used to describe them. Serious students of occultism will readily recognize that ugly head refers not to their looks, but to the great ugly head himself, Baphomet, the bisexual god with the head of a goat, female breast, and cloven feet. So is the Kennedy family into witchcraft? Mystery Schools of Babylon. This was the mysterious figure who the Knights Templar confessed to worship under the torture of the Inquisition. Baphomet was the name Aleister Crowley chose for himself as the outer head of the OTO. So even Aleister Crowley called himself Baphomet. This takes identification with Baphomet is one of the strongest occult links to the family could ask for. Remember in all my videos lately, you know, but I say Freemasonry and Satanism and Jesuits and Zionists and all those groups. I keep saying they're into the occult. Hence is why I'm going through these Peter Moon books. I'm trying to expose a little more information about the occult. Who is the occult? What is the Mystery School of Babylon? Babylon means the gateway to the gods. Why are we attacking the Middle East? Murdering and evicting all the people with all the archaeological digs going on. And they want to rebuild King Solomon's temple, which they are doing. This is all connected. So this identification with the Baphomet is one of the strongest occult links to the family could ask for. This is the Kennedys. Friday the 13th began when Jacques Molay and his Templars were arrested by King Philip of France on Friday, October 13th. Now remember, it was Friday the 13th that they had the French shooting and bombing recently. The same day, October 13th. Right? Oh my. I think Lisa Haven mentioned that in a couple other videos. Everybody came later and said, "Whoa, I didn't even think about that." But here it is, synchronicity again, right in this book. King Philip soon fell dead. So I guess when the Knights Templars were killed, Jacques Molay said, "I'll see both of you before the throne of God within a year." And King Philip soon fell dead, apparently the result of a curse set on him by Molay. But the Inquisition took over and purged the Templars from respected in European society. And remember what I said earlier in this video when I started? Go back to my notes. Aleister Crowley, who was also involved with NASA and Montauk, the abduction of young boys, sexually abusing them, mind controlling them, and forcing them into time tunnel portals, so they say. We'll get more into that. And one of the two beings he was incommunicato with, interdimensional, demons, whatever, looked like gray aliens, was Hiawas, and Law was the other one. Lamb, L-A-M, sorry. But that being he was incommunicato with says, "I am the God of war and vengeance, your holy guardian angel." So the God of war and vengeance is their God. And here on Friday the 13th in France, they have that shooting and bombing. Just information. And so is there a vengeance coming on all of us for the destruction of those people who are into the occult, Babylon Mystery School, and all this other weird stuff going on? Alright, so the Templars split off in two directions. After the Pope and the King Philip had them arrested and wanted all their gold and was burning them at the stake. One faction carried their legacy from France to Scotland and eventually to America. We know this. The others went to Germany and established strongholds, eventually sparking the secret societies which give rise to Hitler. Remember, this series is Freemasonry and Satanism. With all this in mind, one of John F. Kennedy's most celebrated quotes takes on a highly symbolic meaning, if not a literal one. John F. Kennedy, "I am a Berliner," that would be Germany, was not just a PR statement designed to impress a bunch of non-voting Germans with the idea that he would fight communism. It was a statement reaffirming the racial ties and ancestry between the Celts and the Germans. Nordics, Druids comes to mind. Ironically, JFK was in Berlin just before German invaded Poland. He was allegedly monitoring goings-on for his father. There's a picture here. Baphomet above is a Teutonic rendition of the goddess Ishtar, with Baphomet positioned at her groin. A male and female head represent the two polarities of mankind's basic nature. And notice the Maltese cross there. So some interesting goings-on with World War II, Long Island, Project Montauk, into the occult, DNA lineages between these people, Kennedys and Camerons coming from the Witch's Island off of wherever that was I said in this book. A little bit more going on in this reality than we are aware. With that said, I got a couple short things to do. Just to keep bringing my point up. This Time magazine is dated April. Can't see the date here. 2007. 2007. Look at this. They're seriously into investigating how the human mind works. I was watching a video I told you about on Miles Johnson, the Besa series. 21. Couple more magazines. Florida Trend. Going Green. And it would be nice to make things more efficient and cleaner. But I don't think all this marketing is about that. I think it's mind controlling people. Meanwhile, 2010, Popular Science, weapons, drones. Scientific America. Like I said, I read a lot of stuff. The brain's dark energy. Mysterious brain activity holds clues to disorders and maybe even consciousness. You think? How life shaped mineral evolution. Fierce storms and methane seas. Titan revealed. Just saying, these magazines and all this stuff, controlled by the people who want the New World Order and the New Age, it's all meant to make people think a certain way. To accept being microchipped even in the future. Except when maybe Obama declares that owning guns in the United States illegal and tries to confiscate them from everybody. Maybe that's why Jade Helm has positioned equipment and troops all over the United States. And they have computers can monitor it and can monitor everybody. They're microchipping children and people now. And also with other videos, there are people who are already have been abducted and pre-wired as infants, have lived a life of hell, and who go public and talk about it. Anyways, thank you for watching my video. I'm just trying to get the truth out there about programs going on behind the scenes, the occult, and the people, places, and things that we should all be concerned about. This series is Freemasonry and Satanism, and we are aware that the Arabs are being displaced and murdered, and all those countries dissolved. Ukraine, all the countries in the Middle East. We know there's plans for a North American Union, Canada, the United States, and Mexico. The Pacific Trade Agreement that was signed the day they had the Oregon shooting. So everybody was looking over here while they were doing that over there. This is going on and on. Rick Merico reporting.